I came home from work one evening feeling as tired and worn as the dark, gray sky above. I had been looking forward to a quiet night after a long day. The house was silent when I stepped through the door. I usually enjoyed the calm and the familiar smell of home, but tonight something felt off. As I tossed my keys on the table, I noticed a crumpled piece of paper near the trash can in the kitchen. My heart skipped a beat when I picked it up and saw that it was an old pregnancy test. I stared at it in disbelief. Only a few days ago I had undergone a vasectomy, a decision made with careful thought and mutual understanding, and now this test with 2 pink lines stared back at me. I felt a chill run down my spine, as if the cold truth had seeped into my bones. I stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of it all, my mind racing through a storm of questions and doubts. The test was old, perhaps tossed carelessly, yet the evidence it held was too clear to ignore. My thoughts raced as I recalled the events of the past few days. Nothing in my recent routine had hinted at this impossible twist of fate. I sank into a worn armchair and held the test in my trembling hand, feeling both confused and overwhelmed. The silence of the house was suddenly oppressive, echoing the deep loneliness that now began to fill me. As I sat there, I could almost hear the ticking of the clock, each tick a reminder of the time slipping by while I remained stuck in a moment of shock. I remembered how I had trusted everything about my life, the decisions I had made with care and certainty. Now, in an instant, that trust was shaken by this tiny piece of evidence. I questioned myself. Could it be a mistake, a mix-up with an old test? Yet, the test was old enough to be forgotten yet new enough to spark immediate worry. I tried to push away the dark thoughts, reminding myself that sometimes things happen that do not fit neatly into the plans we make. Still, a small voice in my head insisted that I needed to understand what was going on, and I resolved to find out the truth behind this strange discovery. In that quiet room, I began to feel as though my life was turning into a puzzle with pieces missing. I decided to hold onto the test, storing it carefully in a drawer where I could see it and think about it later. My mind was restless, and I could not settle back into the routine of my evening. I wandered through the house, each room echoing with memories of happier times. I recalled the moments of shared laughter with my wife during our early days together, the whispered dreams and promises that had once filled the space between us. Now, as I looked at the pregnancy test, those memories clashed with the bitter taste of betrayal and the sudden sense of loss that threatened to engulf me. I thought of the life I had planned, the simple dreams of a family that I had nurtured quietly over the years. All that seemed to unravel in an instant. I kept replaying the events of the last few days in my mind, trying to find a clue that would make sense of this impossible situation. My hands shook slightly as I caressed the test, the cool plastic a stark contrast to the burning heat of my anger and confusion. I began to wonder if fate had decided to play a cruel trick on me, or if there was another, darker reason behind this discovery. As the night deepened, I felt a growing need to confront my inner fears. I sat by the window and looked out into the empty street, feeling as if I were standing on the edge of a great unknown. I asked myself if the life I thought I knew was merely an illusion, a fragile story waiting to be unraveled by secrets and lies. In that silent moment, I resolved that I would not let fear control my path. I promised myself that I would search for answers, no matter how painful they might be. I knew I had to talk to someone who could help me understand the truth. But first, I needed to gather my strength and make sense of the feelings that now filled every corner of my mind. The test, small and inconspicuous, had become the key to a mystery that threatened to change everything. I felt as though I was standing in the middle of a crossroads, with one path leading to heartbreak and another to a harsh reality. My thoughts raced, and I realized that the calm of the evening had given way to a storm of emotions inside me. The simple act of coming home had turned into a journey of self-doubt and questioning. I knew that I was no longer the man who had walked through that door just minutes ago. I was now someone caught between memories of love and the sharp sting of betrayal. As I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, I silently vowed that I would face whatever came next. I could no longer hide from the truth. The pregnancy test lay hidden away in the drawer, a constant reminder of the new and painful reality that I had to accept and understand. With the night stretching ahead and uncertainty looming, I sat there waiting for the dawn of answers, ready to step into a future that I never imagined possible. I remember the day as if it were yesterday. The soft hum of conversation in the background became a sharp whisper in my ears. I had been in the living room, a cup of coffee in hand, when I heard voices coming from the bedroom. I froze in place, unable to move as the words drifted through the air like a dark secret. It was a low conversation, one that carried the weight of hidden truths. I listened carefully as the soft tones of my wife's voice mingled with that of another, a sound that I recognized all too well as the careful, deliberate tone of her mother. The words were hushed, almost as if they were meant for my ears, but not entirely. I could catch phrases that sent a chill through my heart, mentions of a baby, plans that seemed too secret to be shared in the open, and a name that I had never expected to hear in that context. Connor. Each word felt like a stab, a painful reminder that nothing in my life was as secure as I once believed. I felt the weight of betrayal bearing down on me as I tried to make sense of the conversation. My mind raced, trying to recall any moment that might have hinted at this hidden truth. I thought of the small changes in her behavior, the subtle glances, and the way she had sometimes averted my eyes when we spoke of the future. Yet, I had brushed them aside as mere quirks of daily life. Now, each whispered word and soft sigh took on a new meaning, revealing a truth I had never wanted to face. The more I listened, the more the pieces fell into place, forming a picture of a secret life that had unfolded right under my nose. My heart pounded as I realized that the dreams I had built with her were now marred by deception. I felt a cold pit of doubt growing inside me, replacing the warmth of trust that had once defined our life together. The image of a family, a future that I had envisioned so clearly, began to crumble. I could not help but remember the day we talked about children, about the simple joys of parenthood, and now I was forced to confront the possibility that those words were nothing more than empty promises. The name Connor echoed in my mind like a curse, a reminder of the betrayal that was taking root. I wondered if he was someone she trusted, someone who had slowly wormed his way into the sanctuary of our home and our lives. The idea that she could share such intimacy with another man made my chest tighten with anger and hurt. I sat there, heart in my throat, feeling every word of that conversation as if it were a personal assault on my soul. My thoughts swirled into a storm of questions. Why had she kept this hidden from me? How long had these whispers of betrayal been filling our home? And what did this mean for the future we had planned together? I felt as though I were drowning in a sea of doubts, each wave crashing over me with the force of a lifetime of hidden truths finally coming to light. I wondered if I had missed the signs, if I had been too blind to see the changes that had slowly crept into our lives. The soft sound of conversation turned into an echo of betrayal that followed me into the dark corners of the house. I could feel my grip on the life I had known slipping away as I struggled to keep my composure. I realized that I needed to act, to gather my thoughts and find a way to confront the overwhelming pain of this betrayal. The memory of that conversation was seared into my mind, a constant reminder that the life I had believed in was built on secrets and lies. I took a shaky breath and decided that I would no longer allow these whispers to haunt me in silence. I would seek the truth, even if it meant facing the darkest parts of my own heart. That evening, as the voices faded and the silence returned, I felt a determination growing within me. I knew that I had to face what lay ahead, no matter how painful it might be. I began to plan my next steps in secret, each thought a small act of rebellion against the betrayal that now defined our life. The seed of doubt had been planted deep inside me, and I knew that the path forward would be fraught with difficult choices. I was left with the bitter knowledge that the love I once knew was tainted by secrets, and the name Connor became a symbol of that betrayal. As I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, I could feel the future shifting beneath me, and I vowed that I would uncover every hidden truth, no matter how deep I had to dig. My heart ached with the realization that nothing would ever be the same again, and that the quiet home I once cherished had turned into a battleground of whispered lies and painful truths. I began to search my home for clues that might explain the secrets I now carried in my heart. My days turned into quiet investigations as I combed through rooms filled with memories and small details that I had once overlooked. I started by looking in the drawer where I kept the small items that once meant little, but now seemed to hide a great deal of truth. I found receipts for late-night yoga classes, a series of phone messages that were deleted quickly after being received, and even a few cryptic notes that hinted at secret meetings. Each new discovery added to the growing weight in my chest, a burden of evidence that pointed to a hidden life I had never known. I began to collect these clues carefully, each piece of evidence another link in the chain of betrayal that had shattered my trust. The old pregnancy test, still folded neatly in my pocket, was my first and most painful piece of evidence. I looked at it as if it were a mirror reflecting a life I no longer recognized. I knew that every clue I found painted a picture of a woman I had loved and trusted, now entangled in secrets that hurt like a knife. I remember the day I discovered a receipt for a yoga class tucked behind a book on the shelf. It was a small, insignificant piece of paper that I would have easily dismissed if not for the context in which I found it. The class was scheduled for the late hours of the night, hours when I thought our home should have been filled with the gentle quiet of sleep. The timing made my heart race as I considered the possibility that my wife was spending time away from me in more ways than one. I also found a series of strange phone calls in our shared log. The numbers were unfamiliar, and the messages left behind were too brief to hold any warmth or meaning. They seemed coded, like secret messages passed between conspirators. I kept these messages printed out, lining them up next to the receipt and the test, forming a small collection of evidence that pointed to a hidden affair. With every piece I uncovered, I felt a mix of sorrow and determination. The clues were undeniable, and they told the story of a betrayal that had seeped into every corner of our life. I began to retrace the steps of the quiet hours when I had assumed our life was simple and honest, only to realize that behind every familiar corner was a secret waiting to be revealed. I thought of the times I had seen her leave the house with her phone in hand, the way she would quickly change her tone when I entered the room. At that moment, every small detail took on a new significance. I now held the proof that the gentle words and loving glances we once shared had been replaced by hidden meetings and secret smiles. In my heart, the pain of betrayal mixed with the bitter taste of evidence that I could no longer ignore. I felt as if I were standing in a room filled with ghosts, each ghost representing a small lie, a hidden meeting, a secret that had grown too large to hide. The evidence I had gathered was like a puzzle, and I was slowly piecing it together, one painful fragment at a time. I kept the items in a small box in my room, far away from prying eyes, yet always close enough for me to see them. I would often sit by the window in the late hours of the night, holding the box close and letting my mind wander through the painful memories. I wondered how it had all begun, when trust had shifted into suspicion and promises turned into secrets. I knew that I had to keep every scrap of evidence, every hint of the truth, because I felt that my future depended on it. I began to plan my next moves with care. Each new piece of evidence gave me a sense of power, even as it deepened the pain in my heart. I resolved that I would not let the betrayal destroy me completely. Instead, I would use these clues to force the truth into the light, no matter how harsh it might be. With the hidden evidence as my guide, I walked a lonely path filled with uncertainty. Every moment was a mix of sorrow, anger, and a determination that burned in my soul. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, forming a picture of a life that I no longer recognized, a life built on secrets and hidden truths. I knew that the coming days would force me to make choices that I never wanted to face, but in that quiet moment, I also felt a strange clarity. The evidence was my only guide through the darkness, and I clung to it as I prepared for the storm that was sure to come. I woke up one cool morning with a heavy heart and a mind swirling with the evidence I had gathered. I knew that I had to act quickly before the truth grew heavier on my soul. I began to plan my escape with careful, deliberate steps. I started by quietly packing a small bag with the few personal items that held meaning to me: an old photograph of happier days, a worn watch that had once been a gift, and a few documents that I might need in the future. I moved slowly and silently, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the secrets hidden in every corner of our home. As I gathered my things, I couldn't help but feel that I was leaving behind not only a physical home, but also the life I had once believed in. Every step I took was filled with both sorrow and a growing resolve. I made sure to secure copies of the evidence, the receipts, the messages, the pregnancy test, carefully scanning and saving them on my phone and computer. Each file was a testament to the truth, a record of betrayal that I could no longer ignore. I remember the tremor in my hands as I typed out a message on my computer, my heart pounding with every keystroke. I sent a photo of the pregnancy test to Samantha Green, a woman I had come to trust in my quiet search for the truth. She was married to the man whose name had become a symbol of my shattered trust. I recalled her gentle yet determined eyes when we met briefly, and I knew that she too was hurt by the secrets that had bound our lives together. I also moved my money into a safe account, careful to take only what I needed for a fresh start. I felt a sense of liberation with each small act of defiance, even as the weight of the past pressed heavily on my heart. I wrote short, clear letters explaining that I needed to leave the home I once shared, a home that now held only memories of betrayal and secrets. Each letter was a quiet farewell, a final goodbye to the dreams I had once held dear. As I finished packing, I paused to look around the familiar rooms, the living room where we had once laughed, the kitchen that had filled our days with warmth and shared meals, the bedroom where whispers of promises had once danced in the night. The home felt empty now, a shell that held the echoes of a time when trust had been real and strong. I took a deep breath, feeling the bittersweet mix of relief and sorrow. I knew that my escape was not just a physical departure but a step toward reclaiming my own life. The evidence I carried was not only a record of betrayal, but also a promise of truth that I had vowed to uncover. With my bag packed and my heart heavy but determined, I left behind the remnants of a past that no longer belonged to me. I sent the evidence to Samantha, knowing that together we could force the truth into the light. My escape plan was not born out of anger alone, but out of a desperate need to find clarity in a life turned upside down by secrets. I left the house quietly, each step echoing in the silent halls that had once been full of life. The cool morning air brushed against my face, as if welcoming me to a future I had yet to understand. A future built on the fragments of truth and the promise of a new beginning. I knew that every choice I made now would be a step toward healing the deep wounds of betrayal. As I walked away from the home, I felt the burden of the past slowly lessen, replaced by a growing determination to build a future where honesty and truth would guide me once again. I returned home that afternoon to find the silence even heavier than before. The door opened slowly as I stepped into a house that felt strangely empty. The usual familiar warmth was replaced by a cold tension that seemed to seep from the walls. I found my phone buzzing with new messages that I had not seen before, cryptic texts that confirmed my worst fears. The quiet space now held signs of chaos and secrets unraveling before my eyes. As I walked through the living room, I remembered the soft voices and the whispered betrayals that had haunted me just days before. Now, it was clear that the home I once believed in was crumbling beneath the weight of lies. I could see evidence of her absence in every room, the untouched cup of coffee on the table, the silent echo of laughter that no longer filled the halls. It was as if every item in the house bore witness to the cracks in the foundation of our shared life. I sat down on the old sofa and replayed the events in my mind. The text messages were cold and direct, each one a reminder that I was no longer welcome in the life we had built together. I thought of the mess that had been left behind, unfinished tasks, abandoned dreams, and the unmistakable sign that someone had been living a life separate from mine. Soon, her mother arrived at the door, her face filled with shock and regret at the sight of our broken home. I saw the confusion in her eyes, as if she too was trying to piece together the fragments of what had gone wrong. In that moment, I felt even more alone. The home that was once a sanctuary had turned into a battleground of evidence and emotions. I could see the name Connor scrawled in messages and notes, each reference a painful reminder of the betrayal that had shattered everything. I struggled to hold on to the evidence, the small tokens of truth that I had collected, even as the foundation of our life crumbled around me. I remembered the quiet determination with which I had gathered every clue, and now each piece felt like a brick in the wall of a broken home. Her mother's presence was a silent confirmation that even those closest to us were caught in the web of deception. I could see the worry in her eyes, the realization that the secrets we had harbored were now out in the open. The texts on my phone glowed with messages that I could not ignore, each one a stark message that confirmed the betrayal. I sat there, feeling the pain of every word and every memory, as the reality of our broken home settled over me like a heavy shroud. I remembered the times when laughter had filled these rooms, when every corner held the promise of a future built on trust. Now, the silence was deafening, a silence filled with the weight of every lie and every whispered secret. As I looked around, I knew that I could no longer ignore the truth. Every crack in the walls, every stray piece of evidence, pointed to a life that was unraveling at the seams. I felt the sting of betrayal in every memory, and each memory was a reminder that nothing was as it once was. I clutched the small pieces of evidence in my hand, a receipt, a text message, the photograph of the test, and I vowed to use them as the tools to rebuild my life. The broken home around me was a symbol of the shattered trust and the painful truths that had come to light. I realized that I needed to face this reality, no matter how harsh it was. My heart ached with the knowledge that the love we had once shared was now a distant memory, replaced by a cold web of lies and broken promises. As I sat in the silent living room, I knew that the next steps I took would determine the future of everything I had once held dear. The cracks in the home were like the cracks in my heart, fragile, yet growing wider with every passing moment. With a heavy heart and a resolve that grew stronger with each painful memory, I realized that the life we had known was over. Every small detail, every stray piece of evidence, was a testament to the betrayal that had fractured our home beyond repair. I sat in a quiet cafe on a rainy afternoon, the soft pitter-patter of rain on the windows a gentle backdrop to the storm raging inside me. Across from me sat Samantha Green, a woman whose eyes held both pain and determination. I had met her only recently, but I quickly realized that we shared a common bond, a deep hurt and a burning need for the truth. I remembered the day I sent her the photo of the pregnancy test, my hands trembling as I pressed send on that fateful message. Now, as I sat here with her, the evidence of betrayal was our shared secret, and the desire for revenge had slowly woven us together. Samantha spoke quietly at first, her voice steady despite the anger that simmered beneath the surface. She told me about her own long struggle with the man I now knew as the symbol of my broken trust, a man who, like my own partner, had hidden behind a facade of promises and secrets. As she spoke, I listened intently, nodding in understanding with each painful detail she revealed. It felt as if our individual stories of betrayal were two halves of the same dark coin. We shared our evidence, our doubts, and our plans for what must come next. I explained how I had gathered every small clue from around the house, receipts for late-night yoga classes, strange phone messages, and the little pieces of evidence that painted a clear picture of the hidden life my partner had been leading. Samantha listened without judgment, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and a fierce determination to see justice done. As the rain fell steadily outside, our conversation turned to the future. We both knew that we could not undo the past, but together, we could force the truth into the light. I told her about Victoria Reed, a tough divorce lawyer whose reputation for fighting for the wronged was well known. I had met Victoria during one of those long, sleepless nights spent piecing together the evidence, and I felt a flicker of hope when I saw the fire in her eyes. Victoria had agreed to help me in my fight for truth and justice, and I believed that with her on our side, the web of lies would soon unravel completely. Samantha and I decided that we would work as partners in this quest for retribution. We planned our next moves carefully, our words measured and our resolve firm. Every detail was important. Every email, every text message, every hidden piece of evidence would serve as a weapon in our battle against the betrayal that had changed our lives. I felt a strange sense of relief as I sat there, knowing that I was no longer alone in my pain. Samantha's presence was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there could be a glimmer of hope, a shared determination to reclaim what had been taken from us. The conversation in the cafe was both a meeting of minds and a merging of hearts wounded by deceit. We discussed how every small detail, from the suspicious receipts to the deleted messages, would be used to expose the truth. I could feel the weight of my sorrow begin to lift slightly as we mapped out our plans. The storm outside was a mirror to the tumult within, but together we found a calm in the shared purpose of our mission. I realized that the path ahead would be difficult, filled with painful confrontations and hard choices. Yet, in that small, rain-soaked cafe, a plan was born. A plan to gather every shred of evidence and bring the hidden lies into the light. Samantha and I promised to stand by each other, to face the consequences of our decisions, and to see the truth emerge, no matter how bitter it might be. In that moment, as the rain continued its steady fall and the soft hum of conversation filled the air around us, I felt a determination that was both new and old. I was determined to see this through, to ensure that every hidden secret and every whispered lie was brought to justice. With Samantha's hand briefly touching mine in silent solidarity, I knew that our shared journey toward retribution had just begun. The plan was set, the partners in our quest for truth were united, and the pieces of evidence we had gathered would soon be the tools that shattered the fragile illusion of the life we once knew. I sat at my desk in the quiet office late one evening, the glow of the computer screen illuminating the solemn look on my face as I prepared to send the email that would mark the beginning of the end for the life I had once known. With Victoria Reed's steady guidance, I had decided to file for divorce, a decision that felt like stepping off the edge of a cliff. I recalled every piece of evidence I had gathered, every text message, every receipt, and the worn photograph of the test that lay on my desk as silent witnesses to the betrayal. In a series of carefully worded emails, I explained to my company's HR department and to close friends that I would no longer be tied to the life built on lies. The words flowed from me like a confession, each sentence stripping away the remnants of trust that had once held us together. I made sure to be clear and unyielding, detailing how the betrayal and the evidence of an affair had forced me to take this step. I typed slowly, each keystroke a reminder of the heartbreak that had led me to this moment. I recalled how, not long ago, I had quietly gathered the evidence and planned my escape, knowing that every moment spent in that broken home was a moment lost. Now, as I prepared to sever the ties of a shared past, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. I knew that the divorce would not only end a marriage built on false promises, but would also set in motion the downfall of the life that had been constructed on betrayal. The emails were sent, and with each click of the send button, I felt the weight of the secret life slip further away from me. I had chosen my words carefully, not out of spite, but as a declaration of truth that would leave no room for misunderstanding. It was clear in every sentence that I would no longer be a part of the web of deception that had grown around us. That same week, the repercussions of my decision began to unfold. I received a call from the HR department, a conversation filled with disbelief and questions, as they struggled to understand how a simple mistake could shatter a life built on so many shared years. I listened in silence, knowing that my life was now on a new path, one where truth and justice would pave the way forward, even if it meant facing the darkest parts of the past. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. I learned that the fitness studio where my partner had once found her sanctuary was also affected by the scandal. James, her boss, informed her that she would no longer be allowed to represent the studio in any capacity, a consequence that rippled through the network of lies that had been her refuge. I could sense the collapse of a world that was once filled with small hopes and shared dreams. Every message, every email, every call became a step toward the final dismantling of a life that was built on secrets. I remembered the nights I had spent with Samantha, planning and discussing every detail, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The divorce papers, now finalized with the help of Victoria's relentless effort, were a testament to the painful but necessary end of a marriage steeped in betrayal. I felt a strange calm as I looked at the signed documents, a quiet acceptance that this painful process was the only way to reclaim the life I had lost. The downfall of the life I once knew was not an end, but a transformation. A painful rebirth that would eventually lead me to a future built on honesty and hope. As the evidence of betrayal continued to spread and every hidden secret was exposed, I sat back and realized that my decision to walk away had set in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped. The divorce was final, and with each new revelation, the true nature of our shared past became ever clearer. I felt the sting of every lie as I closed one chapter and began to see the faint outline of a new beginning in the darkness. I woke one morning to find that the world I had known was collapsing in ways I had never imagined. The fallout from the revelations was swift and unforgiving. I watched as the carefully built life of deceit unraveled piece by painful piece. My partner's carefully constructed world began to crumble. Joint bank accounts that once promised a shared future were emptied, as if every coin had been taken away by the hands of fate. I recalled the long hours I spent gathering evidence and building a case for the truth, and I knew that the ruination of her world was only part of the story. I learned that even her personal emails and texts had vanished, leaving behind only echoes of the secrets that once filled our home. The betrayal had spread its poisonous roots deep into every aspect of her life, and now it was too late to salvage the remnants of the trust we once shared. In the midst of this chaos, even the man whose name had haunted my thoughts, Connor, had begun to face his own demons. I heard whispers of financial fraud at his gym, a secret that threatened to destroy the carefully curated image he had worked so hard to maintain. Samantha, with her own network of contacts, had helped spread the word, and soon the walls around his world began to close in. Every revelation, every secret that emerged, was like a nail in the coffin of the life that had once promised so much. I sat by the window of my small apartment, watching the rain wash away the evidence of a past that was now nothing more than a painful memory. The once simple life filled with shared dreams had been replaced by a harsh reality, where every lie and every secret had exacted its terrible toll. I thought about the many nights I had spent poring over receipts and deleted texts, each discovery a painful reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our lives. Now, as the full force of the truth took hold, I felt a deep sense of sorrow for the life that had been ruined by deception. The collapse of her world was complete. Every secret was laid bare, every lie was exposed, and there was no escaping the truth. The harsh reality that had once been hidden in the shadows was now in full daylight, and it cut through the remnants of our shared past like a sharp blade. I realized that as every secret came to light, the lives we had built on false promises crumbled, leaving nothing but ruins in their wake. The collapse was painful to witness, and yet I could not help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction that the truth was finally emerging from the darkness. The life I was forced to leave behind was now in ruin, and with every revelation, the future promised to be both uncertain and full of hope for something new. I knew that from these ruins, I would have to build something different, something that could never be tarnished by lies again. The evidence of betrayal, the whispered secrets, and the exposed lies all served as a stark reminder that nothing is ever as it seems. As I watched the remnants of that world crumble, I vowed that I would forge a new path for myself, a path where honesty, no matter how painful, was the only guiding light in the darkness. I drove slowly back to the house that had once been our sanctuary, each mile filled with a heavy mix of anger and sorrow. The familiar drive that once brought me comfort now felt like a journey into the past, a past tainted by betrayal and secrets. When I reached the house, I could feel the memories in every creak of the floor and every whisper of the wind outside the windows. I stepped up to the door, my heart pounding in my chest as I hesitated for a moment before knocking. The door opened to reveal her, standing there with tear-stained cheeks and eyes filled with regret. In that charged moment, I felt the years of shared love and pain collide in a single, painful instant. The living room, once filled with laughter and warm memories, now bore witness to our bitter confrontation. She stepped aside to let me in, and we faced each other in the dim light that filtered through the drawn curtains. Her eyes pleaded for another chance as she began to speak, her voice soft and filled with sorrow. I could barely contain my anger as I listened to her insist that she was pregnant, that the life growing inside her was a sign that we could still have another chance. My mind raced back to the evidence I had gathered, the test, the hidden texts, the whispered conversations, and I could not let go of the truth that the baby was not mine. My words were sharp and unyielding as I told her to sign the divorce papers and leave the house. I saw the pain in her eyes, the helplessness of someone who had lost everything, and yet I could not allow the lies to continue. Each word exchanged between us was heavy with regret and bitterness. The living room, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now became a battleground where every memory was stained with betrayal. I recalled every moment we had shared, every whispered promise and every dream of a future built together, and now each memory only deepened the pain of the present confrontation. I demanded that she face the truth, that the evidence we had both known for so long could no longer be ignored. My heart pounded as I watched her tremble, the weight of our shattered past reflected in her eyes. I told her that the baby, the promise of a future, was a lie, one that could not mend the broken trust between us. The conversation was filled with bitter words and moments of silence that spoke louder than any sentence. In that fraught atmosphere, I realized that we were both victims of the lies we had nurtured. Yet, I could not let the cycle of deception continue. With a final, resolute command, I told her that it was time to sign the divorce papers and leave. The confrontation was the culmination of months of pain, doubt, and betrayal, a final reckoning that marked the end of a shared life built on secrets. I left the house with a heavy heart, knowing that the final confrontation had sealed our fate. Every step I took away from that place was a step toward a future that was uncertain yet free from the chains of betrayal. In the weeks that followed the final confrontation, I threw myself into rebuilding a life that had been shattered by betrayal and secrets. I spent long days at work, pouring my anger and sorrow into every task, determined to transform the pain into something productive. With Victoria Reed's help, the divorce was finalized, and I began the slow process of shedding the old life that had been stained by lies. I often met with Samantha, the woman who had become my partner in the quest for truth, and together we discussed our plans for the future. Our conversations were filled with cautious hope and a promise of new beginnings, even as the scars of the past were still fresh on my heart. I took comfort in the small victories, a kind word from a friend, a moment of peace in the quiet hours of the night, and gradually, I began to see that the future held promise. I learned to let go of the bitterness that had once consumed me, channeling my energy into building something new and honest. Every day, I found small moments of beauty in the world, a sunrise that promised a fresh start, a quiet walk in the park that reminded me of the simple joys of life. I realized that healing was not about forgetting the past, but about finding the strength to move forward, even when the memories threatened to pull me back. I began to explore hobbies that had once brought me comfort, and slowly, the empty spaces in my heart began to fill with hope. The process was not easy, and there were days when the pain felt overwhelming. But with every conversation with Samantha, with every small success at work, I felt a little bit stronger. I started to believe that a future built on honesty and hope was possible, even if it meant letting go of what I once held dear. The bitterness of the past gradually gave way to a cautious optimism, and I learned to see the beauty in the possibility of new beginnings. I remembered the promises I had made to myself during the dark days of betrayal, and now, step by step, I was beginning to see those promises take shape. I felt the warmth of a new dawn in my heart, one that promised a future free from the lies and pain of the past. I embraced the new life that was unfolding before me, determined to build something real and lasting from the ruins of the old. Each day was a reminder that even after the deepest betrayals, there could be a chance for rebirth, a chance to find light in the midst of darkness. One crisp morning as I walked along a quiet street, I saw her, a figure I once knew so well, now changed by time and hardship. There, in the soft glow of the early sun, stood my former partner. Her appearance was thin, her face lined with sorrow, and as she held her swollen belly with tender care, I recognized the silent truth that had come to define her new life. She spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of regret as she told me that she was expecting a baby girl. She explained that she had named the child Lily, a name chosen in memory of my grandmother, a connection to a past filled with warmth and love that now contrasted sharply with the bitterness of betrayal. Her words stung, each syllable a reminder of the life we once shared and the painful reality that had replaced it. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions, a mixture of sadness, anger, and a strange relief that perhaps the cycle of deception was finally coming to an end. Later that day, I received one last email from her, filled with sorrowful apologies and reflections on the lost dreams that we had both once cherished. I read it slowly, each word echoing the regret of a life that had crumbled under the weight of lies. With a deep, steadying breath, I deleted the email, choosing to let go of the past that had long defined me. In that quiet moment, I felt a subtle shift within, a newfound strength that whispered of hope and possibility. I realized that while the wounds of betrayal might never fully fade, they could become the foundation for a future built on honesty and renewed purpose. With the past now behind me, I stepped forward onto the sunlit street, each step lighter than the last. I knew that the path ahead would not be free from pain or regret, but it was a path I would walk with my eyes open and my heart slowly healing. In that moment, with the memory of Lily echoing in my mind and the bittersweet taste of final goodbyes lingering on my lips, I embraced the promise of a future reborn. I moved on, carrying the lessons of the past as I ventured toward a life that was mine alone, a life of hope, truth, and a chance to build new memories, free from the shadows of betrayal.